So that was kind of quick, and let's jump into the athletic performance. Sean, you're welcome to jump in on any of this. This is a friend of ours from LA. His name's Rich Roll. He heard about Asea. He actually flew into Salt Lake City, and I met with him for a couple days, and he said, I've looked for this all my life. And he said, this is the first time I'll endorse a product. Asea doesn't pay anyone to endorse a product. So like Sean, Rich just found it to be an amazing help for him on all that he did. He's considered one of the 25 fittest men in the world, does a lot of ultra and Ironman type events around the world, finished very, very high in some of those events in Hawaii a few years ago when he started taking Asea. But he loves the product, and excuse me, as I looked into this, I learned really that the body uses three sources of fuel. The one that is used mostly by short race athletes is carbs. And even the longer term athletes will try to push a lot of carbs into their body well before the race. But these three fuels, proteins, carbs, and fats, are generally what the body uses for fuels. We can almost eliminate proteins. That's kind of a last resource. Proteins are used to build structure and to build bones and muscle and things like that. So using it as a fuel is a bad idea. We tend to focus on carbs and fats. Those are breads, pastas, potatoes, rice, etc. And the fats are oils and fatty fish and nuts and peanut butter and seeds and things like that. But historically, athletes have focused on carbs because they know that there's a need for the body to have carbs before a race, and they will oftentimes eat a lot of pasta. But it turns out that you can only push so much carbs into the body. They say that you can store about 390 grams in your blood and your tissue, or excuse me, your muscle and your liver. And it's a finite amount. Once you're there, you're pretty much capped out. You're ready to start your race, and over time, those carbs will be burned. You can use carbs on a short-term basis. Sometimes they say 90 to 120 minutes. And after that, the athletes will oftentimes bonk, and maybe in a minute we can ask Sean to tell us a little bit more about that. But the amount of energy per gram of a carb is 4 calories. Interestingly, a fat is 9 calories, so more than twice as efficient a fuel. So, for instance, if we were able to say, look, there's no need for gasoline anymore, we can do it with sand, and it's readily available, and it's twice as effective, gasoline would pretty much be gone. And that's what we have found with Asea. Asea makes use of our adipose tissue, the fats that are mostly in our abdominal area. There is an infinite amount of that. You can actually store over 100,000 grams in your body. And the energy time for fats, if you go slow, if you sprint, you're going to be out of fuel in a short amount of time. But if you go slower, a lower VO2, you can actually go for days and days and days. Here it says 43 days using the abdominal fat. You, of course, would need to have some carbs with that. You burn the fats on a carb flame, but after you run out of carbs, you're pretty much done. But you can go longer going slower with using the carbs that you have. So ATP per oxidation, one molecule is 38 ATPs of carbs, 214 ATP for one molecule of fats. And there's a little carbon equation down there at the bottom for those that are interested in that. But obviously, there's a lot of energy in our fats, and we have not found a way to tap them. And any kind of endurance athlete, I think Sean would tell you, their focus is on not maxing out their VO2, getting there quickly, but finding a steady state of midway VO2 so that they can make use of the fats. And I think Sean probably as much as anyone understands that. Sean, do you have any interest in talking about that for a second?
Yeah, so you bring up a good point. So one of the things that we've seen with our endurance athletes, even all of our athletes, is that by taking the redox molecules, Asea, is that we're able to keep our heart rate lower during competition. So it goes exactly with what you're saying. If my heart rate is lower during competition, then I'm able to burn more of the free fatty acids and not tap into my muscle glycogen fuel. Because the muscle glycogen fuel is what we're going to burn really fast. And it's good about 90 minutes or an hour to about hour and 15 minutes. And then if your heart rate still stays up, that's when you're going to start bonking, because the way you're taking the fuel is that you're taking the wrong kind of fuel. And so with that, what we're seeing with our athletes is that they're able to keep their heart rate lower during competition and training, which means they're training their body to tap into the free fatty acids or the carbs.
Hey, Sean, your microphone's going in and out again. Can you maybe just go on your mic on your computer?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
What I was saying is, you're right, John, 100%. What we're seeing with our athletes is that they're able to keep their heart rate lower during competition. And by keeping our heart rate lower, even if it's a 10 beats lower during competition, they're training their body to burn the free fatty acids, which is the carbs and fats, and sparing the muscle glycogen, which is a fuel that we don't want to take, because that's what muscle fatigue. And when you see an athlete bonk, it's because they're pulling too much muscle glycogen and not using the free fatty acids. And so what we're seeing is that it's at least a 10 to 20% or beats less per competition after taking the Asea product, being on it after it's about 3 weeks, we start seeing that change.
Wow. That's awesome. I've got a couple of short charts here that will explain what Sean just said. And again, Sean, if you can jump in and give us a little background on these. This is what I was talking about earlier. If you have high intensity, you're burning carbs. If you have a low intensity or a long distance or a lower heart rate, you're generally burning more fats. And so I just want to kind of show that relationship and then move into these interesting charts here. So here's an example of a short race and an energy burn. You can see that a lot of this race is about carbs. There are some fats and some proteins that are used, but mostly it's carbs. It's a short race, and at the end of that race, your carbs are kind of depleted. If it's a long race, it's a little bit different. This is what Sean was talking about.
Well, now, what do you consider a short race and a long race, just for us people that don't know that lingo?
Well, it's a sprint. As Sean was saying, less than an hour, you use a lot of carbs. Anything more than that, it's a lot of fats. But, I mean, even the sprints of, a minute or two or less, it's almost all carbs, very, very little fats. But here's the issue. As we do a long race, as soon as your carbs are gone, those 390 grams in your muscles and your liver, you bonk. You hit the runner's wall. It's kind of a ventilatory threshold. And a runner, you'll see them, they'll start staggering. And at that point, you see that they're burning proteins down at the bottom beyond that. If they're trying to get across the finish line, they're doing damage to their body. And immediately they'll hook them up to an IV after they've passed, and there's a concern that they've done damage to organs, because you're starting to use a source of energy that you probably shouldn't be using. You've done damage to your body. So the concern is that the carbs disappear, the fats are gone, and you're working on protein only. This is Dr. David C. Neiman. He's one of the top athletic scientists in the world. He runs the Human Performance Lab in North Carolina. And he did some studies on Asea. And he said, guys, I have to warn you up front, I'm not a marketeer. I'm not into advertising. I'm not going to twist anything. If what we find out is that Asea does nothing, I will let the world know that Asea does nothing. And he said what was really impressive about Asea is that they were after truth. they wanted to know why the Asea athletes like Sean and others were saying it's helpful and it's valuable. So he did a study on it, and he found, just as Sean was saying, that there's an immediate mobilization of free fatty acids prior to exercise. So he says even 10 minutes after you take Asea, it's in your bloodstream and it's ready to be used as fuel for athletes. And he says this has important implications, allows you to spare glycogen so that you can use it later in the race. And if you do that, your muscle fatigue will be delayed, just what Sean was saying. But very, very significant findings. So here's a race with Asea now. You can see that the amount of carbs has been spared throughout the race. Instead of carbs, we are using more fats, and the fats are being used up in the race, allowing us to spare glycogen, and it's giving the athletes a strong kick at the end to finish the race if they want to sprint to the finish line. So in this case, fats are used much more efficient and providing much more ATP or energy for the athlete. Sean and others have said, look, midway through the race, I can't believe how good I feel. I have spared my glycogen. I feel like I've got an extra gear I can get to if I need to. The Asea product is allowing me to use my free fatty acids, which is a very efficient fuel. And they're saying that, we can simply go longer and feel a little bit better. A lot of reporting negative splits, which means running the race faster on the second half than the first, and new PRs. Sean, do you want to say anything about this chart?
And with our athletes, I mean, this is a great visual part of it too. Is one of the things that we tell people is that think of muscle glycogen as pure sugar and think as free fatty acids as the fuel. If you're pulling from the pure sugars, then your body burns at a much higher rate. It's like taking a bonfire and throwing gasoline on it, and all of a sudden it's gone. And that's what an athlete doesn't want to do. They want a slow burning process through the race. So what we're seeing is that, again, keeping the heart rate down lower, it's pulling out that free fatty acids. So we're doing that longer burn instead of like a sprinter. It's like if I took a sprinter, a 100-yard person run the 100-yard dash, and say, okay, I want you to run that speed for a mile. They can't do that because they'll burn up that fuel so much faster. So what we're doing, or what we're seeing with the Asea on board, is that it's teaching the athletes to be more efficient at burning the proper fuel so that they can perform at a higher level.
Yeah, excellent. Well, as the scientists in Raleigh were seeing this, North Carolina, Research Triangle Park, they were making statements like, we couldn't believe it. There was a drastic difference, hardly believe it, very surprising. Dr. Neiman said, I've been looking for something like this for decades and was really, really impressed with Asea, and he's given it a very strong endorsement for the athlete. So, excuse me, I won't go into detail with these findings here, but you can see that some of these fatty acids were there, and the comparison, interestingly, was done with a salt water as a placebo and shown in gray there. So if people say, Asea is nothing but salt water, we show them this chart and we say, no, it's quite a bit more. You need to look at it a little bit more. But anyway, interesting chart here showing the value of the Asea product in the body for athletes pre, post, and 1 hour post of those exercises. You can see that it's there and ready for them to use. So what are athletes saying? James Lawrence, world record for the most Ironman races. He says, with Asea, I've experienced all these tremendous benefits over the last few years when I'm doing these world records and maybe didn't understand it, but was fearful to go off the product. This helps me understand why I don't get sore and why I'm able to lock in the strong pace and hold it for so long. Cody Waite, Sean knows all these guys, a professional Xterra athlete. So now you have the elite scientists confirming what the elite athletes have already known. It really makes Asea impossible to ignore. And Diana McManus, a 3-time national swimming champion. With Asea, my times have improved significantly. I know I can swim faster. I don't think Sean is still 51. he's moving up there, but he said, when I can train at this level at 51 years and compete with 25-year-olds and blow them out of the water time after time, the science just blows me away. And anyone over 50 hears that and they're like, yeah, Sean, go. So way to go, buddy. It's awesome to see that. So this is the last slide. Prime the body for exercise, prime the body for weight loss. They actually found by taking Asea, you actually burn calories every day. I'm not at liberty to say how many because we have chosen not to give that information yet, but you can actually lose weight just taking Asea. If you take Asea and exercise, you'll lose more weight. It primes the body for healing. And here's my statement. This is my personal belief. In the history of man's existence on the earth, there's never been a more important, needed, beneficial, or revolutionary product, company, or business opportunity than Asea. And it won't be a secret forever. I would say, less than 1% has even heard of Asea. The field, so to speak, is absolutely white, ready for harvest. Anyone wants to go out and share this information, you're going to find 7 out of 10 people are going to say, wow, I got to at least try it. Where do I go from here? This is a numbers game. It's a numbers game. And all you have to do is tell the story. You don't have to try to convince anyone. The science will show them it's real. The anecdotal evidence will say it is real. And if you want to start a business or make a little extra money, it's only gated by how much you or how often you tell people this story. So that's why I did well early on. I just would not stop telling people about it. And I did it mostly to share the health benefits with them. And for some of my athletes, athletic friends, I just wanted them to know about it because they do perform at a much higher level. And I've talked to a lot of athletic directors of the various colleges in the state of Utah and other places around the country. Everyone's interested. Went up and talked to the athletic director in Oregon and out in Florida and a couple other places. But they're all fascinated by it, and I know a lot of them are using it. Some of them have said we've signed multi-million-dollar contracts with these sugar waters. I won't mention any names, but they say we can't get out of those. But secretly, I think they all put a little Asea in their pouches. Anyway, with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Jim or Sean, if you'd like to say anything more. But anyway, that's it.